Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Charlie Nicklin. I'm Chief Executive of IAgrE, and I'd like to thank you all for joining our July presentation. For today's lecture, we did plan to have Stephanie Barclay from the Farm Safety Foundation, but unfortunately she has a family matter to deal with, so Alix Morley has kindly agreed to step in for her. Alix is a farm safety campaign specialist and has been with the foundation for 2 years. Previously, she worked for the AHDB, where she specialised in dairy marketing and communications. The talk today will focus on the themes and activities to support the Farm Safety Week, which starts next week. As usual with our lectures, everybody will be muted, so if you'd like to ask questions, please pop them in the chat at the bottom of your screen, and then at the end of the presentation, we'll unmute you so you can ask in person. Okay, I'll now hand over to Alix.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Charlie. Let me just share my screen and get into presenting mode, and hopefully, come on, there we go. Hopefully everybody can see this now. So yeah, as Charlie said, I'm Alix. I'm from the Farm Safety Foundation, or Yellow Wellies as we're also known. Thank you so much for inviting me to join you all today. So the Farm Safety Foundation is a very small independent charity that was first set up by the NFU Mutual back in 2014 to start raising awareness and challenging those attitudes and behaviours around both physical and mental well-being in primarily a younger farmer audience. So that's farmers aged anything between 16 and 40, although that's not a hard line. We do work with farmers outside that age bracket as well. As I said, we are a very small team of just 4, although currently just 3, as Sophie's just finishing off maternity leave. So Stephanie, myself and Megan, and then looking forward to having Sophie back as well. So why are we doing this? Why are we talking about farm safety and mental well-being? What was the purpose of us being set up? Well, as you may know, there are less than 500,000 people working in agriculture across the whole of the UK. That is only 1% of the entire working population, but it counts for 19% of all fatalities that are taking place in the workplace. So last year, according to the HSE, so 2024 to 2025, 124 workers died in work-related instances across the whole of Great Britain. And in agriculture, 23 of those were farm workers. So out of that 124, 23 were occurring within agriculture. This is just for fatalities, though. What are we seeing in terms of injuries? Well, on average, what we're seeing is 18,000 work-related injuries being reported every year. So that's 10,000 cases of long-term ill health, 8,000 cases of non-fatal injuries taking place in the workplace. And we're pretty confident as well that this is very much just the tip of the iceberg. You'll all know out and about on farms that a lot of people have little accidents, have little injuries that aren't getting reported to the HSE via riddle. These are only the cases that are being reported up to that level, up to the HSE. So we're pretty confident that the situation is much worse than that 18,000 that we can confidently talk about. So what are we doing to address this as a charity? How is the charity working? Well, we're doing it through communications, through engagement, through education, and through our research as a sort of targeted approach to raise that awareness and start influencing that change and that practice within agriculture. So we have our campaigns. We have Farm Safety Week, which is coming up next week, which I'll be talking to you about in a bit more detail shortly. But we also have Mind Your Head, which is our mental wellbeing focused campaign, which takes place every February. We work in partnership with a number of key organisations, people like yourselves, but also people like Royal Countryside Fund, other key businesses, other key organisations as well. We deliver high quality training to young farmers right across the whole of the UK. So we work with 46 different land-based colleges and universities to take our free training to those students. We're in it for the long term. We're in it to change that future generation, to influence that future practice. We undertake sector-leading research, and this is something that a lot of people don't actually understand or don't necessarily know that we do as an organisation, is that every summer we reach out to farmers to get a really good idea of what's going on the ground, what the boots on the ground are seeing, where those attitudes are, where those behaviours are, and we can use all of that to influence our own work, but obviously using it to influence policy, practice and change, whether that's at a farm business level, at a business level, or even at a government level as well. So we are making a difference, we are making a change, and in numbers over the past 11 years, we've trained over 30,000 young farmers across the land-based universities and colleges that I've spoken about, but also working with NFYFC, with the National Young Farmers Network as well. We've trained over 3,000 workers in agricultural businesses. We've achieved over 10,000 press clippings, delivered 19 national campaigns, and we've researched, developed and funded digital printed resources and teaching materials that can all be accessed free of charge. So if you haven't had a look already, have a look on our website, so yellowwellies.org. And you'll find a lot of those materials and those resources available for free on our website. Things like build your own safety plans, things like farm safety checklists, emergency plans, things like that as well. So I mentioned research, and research really is key to what we're doing. For the past 11 years, we've been carrying out research amongst all farmers in the UK under the age of 40 about those attitudes and behaviours into farm safety. In 2018, we started adding in questions about mental health. If you cast your mind back to 2018 was when we had Brexit, when we started to see some real changes and challenges facing the agricultural industry, and started to really understand the impact that this was taking on mental well-being across the industry. So we started adding in those questions, start to get a better understanding of what farmers were facing and where those challenges were when it comes to mental well-being. Then in 2022, we also included farmers over the age of 40 in that survey so that we could start to compare those different attitudes and behaviours. And we'll talk about some of this in a bit more detail. So the statistic you can see on screen is one that's been talked about a lot. So I'm sure many of you will have come across it before. And that is that 95% of young farmers in the UK believe that poor mental well-being is the biggest hidden danger facing the industry today. But one that's perhaps less well known is that 91% of farmers in the UK, and this is all farmers, believe that there is a direct link between mental well-being and physical safety on farm. And this really underlines the fact and the reason that we talk as a charity about mental well-being and physical well-being alongside each other, why we're looking at both those aspects when it comes to safety in the industry. So I'm talking about mental well-being. How are we measuring this within a farming audience? Well, we use something called the Warwick-Edinburgh Mental Wellbeing Scale. And this is a standardized scale used to measure well-being right across the whole of the country, across different industries. And it's a way of asking a series of questions and assessing where somebody may be with their mental well-being, whether they're perhaps doing very well or whether perhaps starting to struggle. So as I said, it asks 14 statements, and people are asked to grade those on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being none of the time, 5 being all of the time. And ultimately, this will give you a score somewhere between 14 and 70. Lowest, obviously, 14, maximum is 70. So somebody with a score of 70 is doing incredibly well. Somebody with a score of 14 is doing very, very badly. So to give you an idea, to put this into some context, the mean score for the UK population is 51. And anything that's a score of 40 or below is considered a serious cause for concern, is suggesting that somebody's really starting to struggle with their mental well-being. So as I said, we started tracking this in 2018 and looking at that mental well-being across the industry. And what we're really seeing is that farmers across all those age groups, their mental well-being really is starting to decline. The only slight difference is that 41 to 60-year-old age group, which has stayed pretty steady. But particularly in that younger farmer audience, in our target audience, those aged between 18 and 40, we are seeing that steady decline in mental well-being over the past few years when you're looking at their WEM score that's coming through our research. And again, to put this in context, farmers over the age of 40, their results are broadly similar to what we're seeing in the general population. They very much align with what we see in the general population. But for those who are in that younger age group, those in that 18 to 40-year-old age group, what we're seeing for an agricultural audience, for those who we're surveying, their results tend to be somewhere between 46 and 48, sorry. Whereas for general population, for those aged between 16 and 44, they tend to have a mean score between 50 and 53. So we do see within agriculture that not only is that WEM score gradually declining, but it is also sitting below where their equivalent age group is sitting within the general population as well. We also, like I said, we're using this to relate to farm safety as well. And we do see a direct link between somebody's mental well-being and their attitudes around farm safety, and very much ties in with that figure that we saw a few moments ago, where 91% of farmers believe there's a direct link between mental well-being and physical safety. And it is something that we see evidenced in our research as well. So when we delve deeper into these answers, when we take those who have a lower mental well-being score and look at their results and some of their attitudes around physical safety as well, we're able to see that those with a lower mental well-being score are more likely to admit to having taken a risk that could have led to a life-changing or life-ending accident or injury on farm. So obviously on the left-hand side of this graph is those with those higher mental well-being, less likely to admit to taking a risk. Those on the right-hand side of the graph, lower mental well-being score, lower WEMWeb score, more likely to have admitted to have taken a risk. Not only when it comes to risk taking, but farmers with a lower mental well-being score, less likely to take steps to stay safe. They're less likely to be wearing PPE or doing those dynamic risk assessments, taking those few seconds to consider the work, to consider the job, consider how they can keep themselves safe, how they can keep themselves protected. They're also less likely to think about the consequences, what it would mean to them, to their friends, to their family, less likely to think it's their responsibility to work safely when in the workplace, when on farm as well. So again, what's the evidence around this? Well, as we saw, 23 farm workers died in work-related instances in 2024, 2025. But on top of that, what we saw in 2024 is 47 suicides registered within the agricultural industry in England and Wales. I just want to dwell on this for a moment because there's a lot of misinformation out there at the moment about suicide within agriculture. It's a very, very difficult number to contemplate. It's a very difficult number to actually verify. So as I said, there is a lot of misinformation out there at the moment. We only use all of the figures that I'm quoting to you today are either coming from our own research or from verified sources, from government sources. So this figure of 47 comes from the Office of National Statistics, and we have confirmed that with them. There isn't a figure for the whole of the UK. So when you see people starting to quote figures around X number for the whole of the UK, Northern Ireland doesn't register suicide by occupation. So when people are quoting those sorts of numbers, it's actually relying on very, very old data. And it isn't really that reliable. So the only official figure that we have is for England and Wales. But this is a terrifying figure when you're thinking about 23 across Great Britain, so that includes Scotland, died in serious accidents on the farm, in the workplace. 47 died as a result of suicide. That's 47 families, that's 47 communities whose loved ones didn't come home to them at the end of the day across England and Wales because of poor mental health in the industry. So what's affecting mental health within farming? Well, there's a number of key things. As you know, farmers are absolutely amazing at looking after their livestock, looking after the machinery, looking after their crops. Traditionally pretty lousy at looking after themselves. And quite often when a farmer comes forward to admit that they're struggling or to admit that they're worried about something, it's quite far down the line. They're going to have been worried about it, or they're going to have been struggling with it for quite some time before they've come forward to ask for help. There's a number of different things that are really affecting farming at the moment, really putting that extra pressure on. I don't think any of these will be a surprise to any of you. But things like the weather, we were talking before this webinar started that at the moment we're all praying for rain, and I'm lucky enough where I live that the rain's just coming through. This time last year, we were all praying for some sun, and we were all dealing with the floods, and we were all dealing with farmers not being able to get crops into the ground or not being able to get crops off the ground at the back end of the year and things like that. Rising costs, obviously, and the fall in farm incomes, that constant struggle to make both ends meet. Government policies, the impact of that, especially at the moment, the impact of IHT, of SFI, of all of those changes, double cab pickup tax, all of those changes, adding that extra pressure, that extra uncertainty, which is particularly worrying and particularly putting pressure onto our farmers and our farming businesses. Paperwork, testing, constant concerns around TB testing, things like that as well, and assurance. Rural isolation, of course, when we're talking about isolation, it's not just a geographical isolation. but that isolation of long hours spent on your own, spent in your own head, whether that's hours in the lambing shed, perhaps cut off from some of those sort of key relationships, key support networks that you might have at other times of the year, as well as long hours spent over harvest that we're coming into now, long hours spent in the tractor cab, again, cut off from some of those key relationships, key support networks as well. And of course, long hours, and that's something that I just want to dwell again a little bit more on now. So this is something we've been very much looking into in our research, is the amount of hours that farmers are now working and the impact that this has on farmers, on their friends, on their family as well. So from the pool that we surveyed back in August, September 2024, we found that farmers on average were now working 60 hours a week. That was up from 57 the year before. And when you think about the average number of hours for a full-time worker in the UK being 36.4, farmers working 60 hours a week is a huge amount of time, it's a huge amount of pressure. It's reducing that time away from work, time away from the business, time away from the farm, the time that we all need to process, to recover, to heal. But on top of that, and what's particularly worrying, is that 44% of farmers surveyed aged 41 to 60 are working more than 81 hours a week. And when you start to think about 81 hours a week, what that means in terms of number of hours worked a day, let alone number of days worked in a week, we can really see how this is taking a toll on those farmers who are working such significant hours. That really does mean that they're not getting time off farm, they're not getting time away from the work, they're not getting the time to process, to think about different things, think about things that aren't farming, to really give themselves that mental and physical break from the work, and how all of this can start to stack up and cause that issue with that mental well-being. But it's not just about the mental well-being as well, it's about the physical safety. And what we also saw is 33%, that's 1 in 3, of those farmers we surveyed who are working on average more than 9 hours a day, 33% of them admitted to having had a serious accident or near miss in the past 12 months. So that's a 1 in 3 chance, if you're working an average of more than 9 hours a day, of having an accident or a serious near miss that could lead to potentially life-changing or even life-ending injuries as well. So how can we help? What are we trying to do as a charity? Well, as I said, we're out and about delivering our awareness campaigns. We've got Farm Safety Week coming up next week. I'm about to tell you a little bit more about some of that and how you can get involved with that as well. And like I said, we have Mind Your Head, our mental wellbeing campaign, that takes place at the beginning of the year in February as well. We're working very closely with different organisations. We're delivering our introduction to farm safety and pre-placement sessions at schools, colleges and universities right across the whole of the country. And we've recently this year introduced our Introduction to Minding Your Head session as well for our land-based colleges and universities. So this is really expanding on some of the Mind Your Head training that we already had included in the Introduction to Farm Safety, and putting some more emphasis on that as well. We work closely with those young farmers clubs, working closely with people like the Royal Countryside Fund, but also with groups such as vets, with retailers, with insurance agents as well, and with different sort of discussion groups and organisations, really trying to ensure that we can all work together, because we're only going to create change, we're only going to move the dial on physical and mental well-being within this industry by coming together as an industry and by all working together. So I just want to talk a bit about Farm Safety Week, which is coming up next week. So like I said, it will be running next week, kicking off on Monday, running between Monday and Friday, so the 21st to the 25th of July. So what is Farm Safety Week? Well, as we've just spoken about, farming has the single poorest safety record of any occupation within the whole of the UK. Now, as a charity, we're talking about farm safety. This is something that is important to us 365 days of the year. This is what we're doing. But like I just said, it needs the whole industry to come together to really put the spotlight onto farm safety and what we can all do as an industry to start moving the dial. So this is what Farm Safety Week is about. Farm Safety Week is about bringing together 450 plus partners and organisations across the whole of the UK and Ireland to really shine that spotlight on physical safety and what we can all be doing to start changing that culture, changing that behaviour, and reducing that number of work-related deaths and injuries that we're seeing every year. So research that we conduct every year has shown that this campaign is very welcomed by the industry and very well recognised by the industry. And it's definitely one that we need and want everybody to get involved with so that we can start preventing death and injury on farm. As employers, we are responsible for ensuring that there is a safe working environment and that people are kept healthy. As workers, we have the responsibility to work safely, to protect ourselves and not to endanger others, to make sure that we're looking after those around us, that we know our rights, that we're following that 1974 Health and Safety at Work Act, that we're wearing the correct PPE, etc. And collectively, as an industry, we have that responsibility to work together, as I've said, to improve the safety record as a whole industry. Now, we've been running this campaign for over 12 years. This is our 13th year now. And over the past 12 years, our message has been very consistent. We've been talking about taking that extra care. It's one of the things we talk about as a charity a lot, is giving ourselves that extra time, that extra breathing space. To make sure that we're thinking about doing those dynamic risk assessments, thinking about what we need to do, what could go wrong, and how we stay safe. So we've been talking about taking extra care when working with animals. We're working with machinery, particularly moving vehicles, and that's going to be very key as well. We've made significant strides. We've seen awareness increase. We've seen, particularly amongst that younger farming audience, that younger generation, that people are becoming more conscious of safety on farms, and we are seeing those numbers start to decrease, which is incredibly encouraging. And it's not something that's going to happen quickly, but it's something that we need to keep working at. But this year, in our 13th annual Farm Safety Week, well, it's 13th campaign, so we can't not touch upon the number 13. So we are going to be asking why, after 13 years, farming is still unlucky for some. And what more can we do? What challenges remain? What can we do to reflect on the progress that we've made, to acknowledge those challenges that remain, and make sure that we're moving forwards to continue to address some of these key issues that are taking place across the industry? So our audience for the campaign, we do work very nationally on this campaign. Our primary audience is obviously anybody working or living within agriculture in the UK and Ireland. But while we are targeting those people who are working within the industry, we do also want to make sure that we're raising awareness about some of these challenges amongst a wider audience as well. So we do target it. Our secondary audience is targeting the wider general public, helping the public to understand what the challenges are, what the risks are for farmers who are putting food onto our plates 3 times a day, what some of those issues they are facing are. So we're doing this in a number of different ways. We're working very much as a multi-channel approach. It is a fully integrated campaign. This is not just a social media campaign by any means. We've put a lot into researching, into writing, into investing in the creation of blogs, articles, press releases, events and videos, all of that sort of supporting content to make sure that we do have this fully integrated campaign that we're able to put out there, targeting farmers, targeting industry, but also raising awareness amongst the general public as well. So we're working with local, with national, with trade media to encourage them to promote the campaign and get behind the campaign as well. We're working with different partners to encourage them to create and share messages to support the campaign, to come up with their own ideas, as well as sharing our own content as well. And of course, we'll be getting on board and sharing their content as well. Promoting obviously key messages on our social media channels. I said it's not just a social media campaign, but obviously social media is an important part of that campaign, and especially for us with a slightly younger farming audience as our key audience, it's a very important way to reach out to that audience. So we'll be sharing research, we'll be sharing stories, we'll be having guest blogs, different videos. All of this will be available via our website and via our social media channels. So please do keep an eye out for that over the course of next week. So again, how are we doing this? Well, during the week, we'll be reaching out to some of those key audiences that I've said. It is a fully integrated campaign, and we do have a toolkit that we have sent out that includes some of those key assets, some key logos, things like that, suggested posts for social media, suggested content, key themes, some of the things I'm about to talk to you about here as well. If you haven't received the toolkit and would like to receive it, then please do drop me a line. I'm sure my email address can be shared, or you can find our generic email address via our website. It's farm_safety_foundation@nfumutual.co.uk. But I'm sure that can be shared with you as well. So if you would like a copy of the toolkit, please get in touch. We don't have a strict set of rules for anybody to follow. We're very much about bringing everybody on board, letting you know some of our key themes, but we want you to be able to shout about what's important to you as well, that you can adapt some of the stuff that we're doing to suit all of the different partner organisations, every individual circumstance as well. And we're really excited to see what other people are talking about and putting out there and sharing as well. So we do have an official name. The official name is Farm Safety Week. We don't use any form of derivative of that. It's not Farm Safety Week 2025. It's not Farm Safety Week 13 or anything like that. It is literally just Farm Safety Week. We have created a new logo for it this year with the 13th annual Farm Safety Week. This is all included in the toolkit. So if you would like a copy of it, like I said, do drop me a line. And the official hashtag is #FarmSafetyWeek. Again, we don't use FSW or Farm Safety Week 25 or anything like that. It's always just #FarmSafetyWeek. So if you are creating your own content, please do use that hashtag. Tag us in at Yellow Wellies UK as well. It's really useful for us to be able to see what everybody else is doing, and really helpful for us as a very small charity to be able to track that engagement, track that use of that hashtag, and of people tagging us in as well, so that we can take that back to our trustees, share it with people internally and externally as well, to emphasize how important this week is, to build that engagement with this week, but also to help with the justification of the costs that we put into it to organise and to run Farm Safety Week as a national campaign as well. So what are we looking to do next week? Well, we have a number of key themes. So on Monday, we will be launching the campaign alongside our hero film, which we're very excited about. So you may have seen some of our hero films before. These are the films that go out at the beginning of the week to really emphasize a particular area or a particular theme that we're looking at, and that we then use repeatedly throughout our training when we're going out to the colleges, to universities, help to re-emphasize some of those key messages. On Tuesday, we're going to be reflecting back at what we've achieved over the past 13 years, and we're going to be looking at 13 different stories from some of our ambassadors. So we don't use volunteers or ambassadors in the same way as many charities do. We don't have them on stands or anything like that with us. Our ambassadors are ambassadors because they're sharing personal stories. They are incredibly brave, amazing people who have been affected by some of the things we're talking about, either a physical injury or struggles with mental well-being. And they're sharing their stories so that other people can learn from their experiences and the things that they have been through. And that is an incredibly brave and incredibly personal thing to do. So we really want to spend Tuesday focusing on some of those key stories that we've seen over the past 13 years. On Wednesday, it's Eyes on Safety. So if you've seen us out and about at any of the shows over the past few months, you will have seen that we've had a particular emphasis on eye protection and eye safety. This is inspired by the story of one of our ambassadors, by Ryan, who lost the sight in one of his eyes when he was 19. And we shared his story a few years ago. But we're going to have a particular focus on that maybe forgotten, maybe slightly overlooked sense that we take for granted, which is our sight. So we've got some exciting content coming out about that. On Thursday, we're going to be focusing on moving vehicles, particularly on ATVs. We'll be down at the Royal Welsh. We've got an exciting event going on there. I'll talk to you about that in a minute. And on Friday, we do this every year. We really like to end the campaign on a really positive note, on something to celebrate as an industry. So we will be calling out 5 farm safety heroes. They're people from across all the different 5 nations, so Scotland, Northern Ireland, Republic of Ireland, England and Wales, people who are going above and beyond to really promote farm safety in their sector. It's a really nice way to end the week, to really promote some of those stories and people who are really making a difference and trying to move that dial on safety within the industry. We're always looking for nominations for those heroes as well. So while we've got 2025 wrapped up for that, we'll be starting to look for nominations for 2026 as well. So while it's fresh in your mind, if there's anybody who you think deserves a shout out next year, please do drop me a line and we'll keep that in the back pocket for next year. We have a number of events taking place across the next few days as well. So tomorrow, Megan and I will be down in London for a parliamentary drop-in session hosted by Sarah Dyke, who's an MP down in Somerset. So really exciting and good opportunity to be available for MPs to come and have a chat with us about some of these statistics, some of the things that I've been talking to you about today, some of the challenges that are being faced by farmers, some of the things that they can do within their constituencies to promote physical and mental well-being within the agricultural audience as well. On Tuesday, back in Stratford, we'll be hosting a lunch around that 13 years, 13 stories theme, thanking those who've been particularly close to us, particularly involved with us over the past 13 years, and some of those ambassadors who shared their stories. And on the Thursday, we will be down at the Royal Welsh Show, this one I just briefly mentioned, and we will be launching a very exciting new ATV bursary. So we do have a reception around lunchtime. I can't remember the exact time, I'm afraid, of the Royal Welsh for that bursary. So if you're down at the Royal Welsh on that Thursday and fancy coming along, please do drop me a line and we would love to extend the invitation to you as well. Again, I'm sure my email address can be shared. So how can you get involved? What can you do next week to help spotlight safety and promote Farm Safety Week? We've often said farming is more than a job. It is a way of life, but it is our collective responsibility to make sure that we stay safe, that those who we are working with, our friends, our colleagues, our family, are staying safe. It is our industry, but it is our challenge to start creating lasting change. And as I keep saying, we can only do this by coming together. This isn't something that we can achieve as a charity on our own. So join the conversation, follow us on social media, help us spread the message. I'll talk to you a bit more about that in a sec. Use that hashtag Farm Safety Week. Be the voice of change. What sort of things could you be thinking about? Are there changes that you can make within your own lives to keep things safer? Are there challenges that you've had to face that you found a way to overcome that you might be interested in sharing? If there are, perhaps you'd like to get involved as a farm safety ambassador. Do you have a story to tell that you'd be happy to share with people so that they can learn from you? If you do, again, please do get in touch because we would love to work with you and would love to feature you as part of the week. So some ideas of some of the stuff that you could do if you do want to get involved. Consider writing a letter to your local newspaper or to one of the farming publications that are out there, highlighting why health and safety in farming is important to you, or things that maybe you've done or changed to keep yourself safe or those around you safe. Think about using our Farm Safety Week logo. Again, I can get copies sent out if you'd like some of those. Highlight some of the resources available. I spoke earlier about have a look at our website and some of the stuff that's available, but we've got our little book of farm safety. We've got the little book of minding your head, build your own health and safety policy, and some of those other digital tools as well. So feel free to signpost to those or any of those resources you've got yourself as well. You could think about issuing a specific Farm Safety Week newsletter or e-newsletter to members, to customers, to those who you're working with. Or set up a Farm Safety Week seminar or workshop or training session. Or if you're attending shows over the next few weeks, is there something you could do to highlight Farm Safety Week? It doesn't have to be during the week itself, but maybe looking back at some of the stuff, some of those key messages around farm safety. Or even sending a press release out. And we do have a draft press release that you can edit or use yourself, available in our toolkit. On social media, it's a fantastic way to quickly inform, quickly reach out to your audience and to get them involved as well. So you could update your website, your social media cover photos, use the logo, use your own images, put our logo on your images. We've got that available as a PNG, so it's very editable as well. It's a hard word to say. You could post your own video. Could you do a little reel or something talking about how you stay safe, or things that you've done or adapted to improve safety across the industry? And like I said, get involved, follow us on social media, like, comment, share, all the usual. We can't do it without you. And please make sure you're tagging us in at Yellow Wellies UK and using that hashtag Farm Safety Week. I'd really encourage you to use the tag, to use the @Wellies UK as well as the hashtag. As you saw, there's only 3 of us working on this campaign, so it's much easier for us to pick up your content and be able to reshare it if we've been tagged in directly as well. Social media tips, I'm sure you're aware of a lot of these, but obviously posting consistently, making sure that you're using images and videos to really grab people's attention, to bring them into the conversation. Think about the timing, thinking about the audience that you're targeting. As I said at the beginning, I used to work for IAgrE as part of the dairy team there. We usually posted around lunchtime, because that's when we knew that we were going to grab that dairy audience, because they were in the parlour first thing and they were in the parlour from 3 o'clock. So think about who that audience is and where your timings are best. Think about the language you're using. Avoid the jargon. We see this quite often, actually, that farmers want to be able to read stuff very quickly, and they don't have a huge amount of time. So using that plain English is really important. Making sure that you're talking to, not at, is key. Share all that relevant content, share it from other organizations as well. Use those real life examples. We all know that, I was about to say farmers learn from farmers, but I think with any industry, with any group or organization, we learn from each other. Peer-to-peer learning is absolutely vital. Be nosy, ask those questions, ask what somebody's doing, put polls out on your social media, ask your followers what's going to get them engaged, what they want to see, etc. And like I keep saying, tag us in and use that hashtag as well. So obviously we've got Farm Safety Week coming up next week, but Farm Safety Week is just 1 week. This is something that we need to address as an industry, that we need to move the dial on as an industry. So what can you be doing after Farm Safety Week to continue to take that message forwards, to think about that change that we can all be making across the industry to make it safer? So designers, could you create something? Could you do something to agricultural vehicles or machinery to make them safer? What could you suggest? How could you make that safer? Engineers, when you're working on vehicles or equipment, do you just do what they ask, or could you look for other opportunities to improve the overall safety? And educators, do you know enough? Are you teaching others? Are you sharing that information? Is there more information you could be sharing as well? But to everybody who's watching this, are you happy talking about safety concerns? Are you comfortable and confident raising those questions if you see a practice that you think could lead to a serious accident or injury? Think about that moral implication as well. How would you feel if you saw something that wasn't safe, that you thought could cause an accident or injury, didn't say anything, and then found out that somebody was injured or even killed as a result of that? How would you start that challenging conversation? Have you thought about how you might approach that conversation? This is our industry and it is our problem. And it's really important that we all ask ourselves regularly, are we doing enough to make this industry safer? And what more could we be doing to collectively make the industry safer? So thank you so much for bearing with me through that. It was a bit of a whistle-stop tour, but I believe we've got some time for questions if there are any.
Yeah, thank you for that, Alex. Yeah, the first question's from me, actually. I know you're not the HSE, but are there statistics to compare the UK with Europe and the rest of the world in terms of farm accidents and fatalities? I'm not aware of any. I'm just wondering, are we better, worse, or are we the same as our colleagues around the world?
In terms of the rest of Europe, I don't know, but I'll go away and find out and let you know. One of the groups we're working with for Farm Safety Week this week is actually Farm Safe Australia, who are going to be running their own Farm Safety Week at the same time as ours. So that's quite interesting. In terms of Australia, they had significant improvements, I believe, in 2023. And then in 2024 saw those fatalities rise again. So we've got some figures which we'll be releasing next week from Farm Safety Australia, which will be interesting to look at. I will find out about Europe. Interesting question, because we tend to get asked, how does it compare to the rest of the UK, not the rest of Europe? So it's not something we've looked into before.
Yeah, I suppose it is. We just assume other countries are similar, but you I've been lucky enough to travel around the world a fair bit and see different farmers, and people do treat it differently in different parts of the world. It is
Yes.
parts of the world it is very much a job, and you shut off from it at night. Whereas in the UK, we like to talk about it as a vocation and a way of life, and it's just
Yeah.
something you don't put down. And that's possibly a big part of the problem, isn't it? That 5 o'clock doesn't come, comes, and then you turn off, and you're not doing
Yeah.
agriculture anymore. That's not what happens, and it can be a big challenge. But
If you can leave it with me, Charlie, I'll look
yeah,
into it. I'll have a chat with Stephanie as well,
yeah,
and get something over to you.
yeah, okay. Next question is from Michael.
Hello, Alex. Thanks very much for a no-holds-barred presentation and summary. As a health and safety practitioner myself, often we have to overcome barriers on people's perceptions, where immediately the word health and safety is mentioned and it's, paperwork, time, farmers, are practical. They can do risk assessments in their head. They understand what things are. How do we get them into this thought process of just taking that time and putting controls in place?
So one of the things we say as a charity, and it sounds a bit cliched, but it is incredibly important, is you are your farm's biggest asset. And it's funny how often when I'm talking to a discussion group, or if I'm talking to sort of a group of farmers, I'll say that and they'll sort of look a bit shocked that I said, you are your farm's biggest asset, that they put all of this care and attention into the machinery and into the animals, but ultimately they have all of that knowledge. And I think it's about emphasizing that point, that business cannot run. It doesn't matter how well maintained the machinery is, how well those animals are looked after. If they're not looking after themselves, they're not going to be able to run that business. So what we talk about is giving themselves seconds. It's giving themselves that vital time to do that dynamic risk assessment and trying to get them to think about putting themselves first, giving themselves the same care and attention as they're giving every other asset on that farm as well.
No, certainly. No, it's a drip feed process.
Very much so. I don't know whether you came across it a couple of years ago. So we've updated our VR for this year, which is very, very exciting. But we had some virtual reality technology that we were taking out to shows and to education last year and for a few years before, which was looking at our virtual farmyard. So it was a 360-degree view around a virtual farmyard, which had a number of different hazards and risks in that farmyard. And we were asking people to do that 360. They only had 60 seconds to do it, to identify some of those risks, and trying to really emphasize that even in 1 minute, even if you step out, if you're a contractor or a supplier or attending a new site, that giving yourself 60 seconds, that's not a huge amount of time, just to do a full 360 can really make you aware of a lot of those hazards and a lot of those risks, and get you thinking about what you need to do to stay safe, how you need to be moving some of those, even things like, could there be loose animals? Could there be children somewhere? Could there be machinery coming around a blind bend or things like that, just to keep yourself aware and keep yourself safe as well.
Okay, Alan, you got your hand up?
Yeah, thank you, Charlie. I've got a number of questions, but I'll just deal with this one first to give others a chance. But a point that Alex, or a challenge that Alex threw out, was really to our members as designers. And you mentioned as well, is there a comparison of statistics across Europe and across the world? I think in my own experience, what we've found, never mind the detail of the statistics or where we are in the league, if you like, in terms of are we doing well or not. I think the general story I've seen from HSE statistics is that overall UK are doing quite well relatively. But the key thing about agriculture is we're killing and injuring people in the same ways the world over. It's the same things that we need to keep promoting. And the institution is an international group as well. So we've got a big part to play in that, I think, worldwide. I use the hashtag on a lot of my LinkedIn posts, Farm Safety Has No Borders. So if you're using guidance from Yellow Wellies, from Northern Ireland, HSA and on wherever, it doesn't matter. It's relevant across the world, and there's some really good stuff internationally over in Canada, New Zealand and so on as well. So I think it's about sharing that, which gives you other resources. I can't compliment Yellow Wellies enough for the resources on their website. It's something we should all really be pushing. I see that as a one-stop shop. In those two little booklets, you know, the farm safety book and Mind Your Head, there's so much useful information to start the conversation. So I think that's something, again, we can all do. But if I may, we've got Keith Hawken on the line, and the challenge in terms of the role of designers, a lot of our members are involved at the front line in making those European and international standards. And I know, Keith, a few years ago, there was talk within SEN, I think, of coming up with a better way of reporting and recording machinery-related accidents. I'll give him a chance to get online, but that's an interesting challenge to see from the manufacturer's perspective. If only 20% of injuries get reported to HSE, I think that's still a reasonable figure to expect. There's gross underreporting, and I think we've got a better system than many other European and into other countries too. So I think the information that manufacturers can pick up is very revealing. Thank you.
Another question that was in my mind, I've not written down, which was you showed some statistics about working hours. Is that something that can be shown for different age groups? Because one thing I've sort of picked up over the years is the younger people coming into farming are much more aware that it is a job and it doesn't just take over their whole life, you know. And are they more, are younger people working less hours than, say, the older people is what I'm getting at? Because I can imagine that is the case, because I know several contractors in my area and they absolutely treat it as a job and say, you know, we try, if we can, not to work Sundays, we try and keep the hours down. Obviously they've got to do a service for the customers, but they're not just working all the hours God sends for the sake of it.
So I would personally have to go back to the raw data to check that to be able to give them to you. I couldn't tell you what the breakdown is off the top of my head, I'm afraid. But I can go and have a look at that. We were, for the purpose of this, we were more interested in that overall headline, looking at it overall. But yeah, we do, because we've been able to look at those 44% of 41 to 60-year-olds working more than 81 hours a week. So it's something I can get, but again, sorry, you'll have to bear with me.
Just question if you do, I mean, because, you know, people in the ag sector do like to brag about how many hours they work, which is just ridiculous when you think about it. And I just think that the younger people have just got a different outlook on life.
Yeah.
In general.
And what you said is absolutely spot on, and it's a worrying trend, isn't it? That it is this pride in the amount of hours worked, and sometimes you see it in terms of pride in terms of having injuries as well, and pride of being able to just keep going. And actually that is against another culture that we need to challenge, that actually working those many hours, incredible, but are you giving yourself enough time to recover, to process, to be able to give 100% when you're then turning back up to the farm? Are you then keeping yourself safe? And that moral duty we all have to come home safe to our friends and family at the end of the day, moral duty to make sure that those we're working with come home safe to their friends and family at the end of the day as well. And some of those wider consequences of doing too many hours or working when you're unwell. I was talking to a group the other day, and one lady put her hand up, and she'd really suffered some consequences of pushing too hard when she was physically quite ill, and had suffered long-term consequences as a result of that, and was very keen to share that with everybody else in the group so that they could learn from her as well.
It's interesting you mentioned unwell. I was at an event last month, the Milking Equipment Association, and a lady called Sam Evans from the Farming Community Network did a presentation, and she'd been contacted by the Macmillan Cancer Trust
Yeah.
because the Macmillan people in their statistics would show that rural people in rural communities, cancer was so much higher than other communities.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
they went to the FCN to basically ask, why is this?
Yeah.
And understand it. And it is like what you're saying, that people
Yeah.
don't look after themselves.
Yeah.
You know, people are not getting things checked out, you know, it's, and
Yeah.
you know, 1 in 2 people these days are going to get cancer, aren't they? Is the statistics that get shown. So,
yeah.
you know,
So FCN are working very closely with Macmillan now, and they're running a national campaign to get out and about and to raise that awareness and encourage farmers to get those health checks, to get those field nurses out and about and things like that as well, and try to make healthcare and mental wellbeing care more accessible to farmers. And I think we're seeing a lot more of that. I'm going off on a tangent now, sorry, but we're seeing a lot more of that in terms of people attending livestock marts and things like that with those field nurses, with those drop-in sessions, if anybody is worried about mental well-being or anything like that, with what the Ag chaplaincy and those groups are doing as well in terms of that outreach.
Yeah. Okay, Alan.
Well, thank you again. Just thinking about our very broad church that the institution is, for Alix's benefit, and I think, you know, Steph has briefed you. I mean, we cover everybody from the students that you're meeting yourselves through to, you know, senior directors or whatever of all the major international machinery manufacturers and everywhere in between. The engineers out there doing the repairs that you rightly flagged up. And I've seen that latter group particularly as having a valuable role as eyes and ears, not just Farm Safety Week, but throughout the year, as you said. So I think the challenge for us as the institution is how do we get these messages out? We do have a health and safety special interest group, but I must confess that we need to rejuvenate the webpage, and I think you've given us a lot of information today to help us do that and to put into an article in our quarterly journal landwards as well, and that will help to get this message and get people to watch this recording. I think that's key, not just to access the resources, but to follow this through, the useful information that you've given to us today, Alix. So personally, I take on that challenge, Charlie, perhaps with Mike and others, to have a look at the website and understand the structure of the format of the website is going to be changed slightly. So happy to have a separate conversation about that. And I think, you know, engaging with the students, and I'm thinking particularly the award that the institution gives to a student each year for a project which can have an impact on improving safety, whether it's management, physical design, or whatever. I did have a conversation with Mike in advance of this session, and Stephanie kindly offered, indeed offered, we didn't twist her arm at all, did we, Mike? She straight away leapt on that award and said that the Farm Safety Foundation, Yellow Wellies, would love to sponsor that award. So I think that's a real good outcome to engage. It's just we need to do a lot more to get the students to enter projects.
Yeah, the award I think is a great idea. I mean, to be honest, we love it when people sponsor stuff because it gives a whole new advertising arm to it. It means somebody else is endorsing it. So we'll link you up with Sarah, who looks after our awards, and we can certainly do that because at the moment it's an IAgrE award. So it's offered to the students, and we get some brilliant projects coming through. I mean, the one that won it this year I thought was fantastic. But yeah. So it's definitely worth doing that, and it gives, you know, you can advertise that for us as well, you know.
And to follow on to that, Charlie, I think over the years there have been some really good ideas since we've been running that, but we've never captured them in one place. And it would be good to do that in the say on the web page as well as in the student e-news. I think Marion's on here. It would be worthwhile mentioning that, and encourage those who have won awards or even just entered in the past to let us know did anything come to fruition? Did they get commercial sponsorship or produce an item even for home use? You know, just to build on that and to recognise their efforts and, you know, good thinking, as it were, in the past. So thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from anybody? Richard.
Hello. Bit of personal experience. My brother is a farmer, and he has been under some pressure because, unfortunately, he partially lost his sight, so he can't drive and is isolated. But he fortunately has been involved with machinery rings, so he has that opportunity to take the pressure off, as has been demonstrated sometimes. But the biggest effect on him this time has been the weather. Last year he didn't get anything off the farm, and this year isn't much better. But the incapacity does make it a little bit more difficult. One of the things that struck me was at the budget. I've never seen him look so concerned after the budget earlier in this year, and that was another thing. And on a silly thing, the NFU won't insure anybody over 80.
Really?
Yes, really. Another challenge.
As in, if you're a business, if you're running a business, do you mean?
Yeah, well, it was his birthday last week.
Ah, right.
I was talking to somebody else locally, and she was trying to get insurance. She got the same answer.
As in insuring vehicles?
Yeah, a vehicle, yeah.
Okay, it's interesting.
Interesting pressure.
Yeah, I've not heard that before, yeah.
Anyhow.
Yeah, okay.
So I'm busy doing my best to support him, but but he does take, one thing he does take Sunday off. Usually, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Alan, one more question then.
Thank you. It wasn't it. This is my last one. It's really a suggestion and a point, but again, Alix referred to how we communicate to farmers, and there is some good research. We covered that in another professional body that Mike and I are aware of, IOSH, at a conference back in 2019 on how to communicate effectively. There's a lot of really good research up in Aberdeen, for example, on behavioural research, situational awareness, specifically for tractor drivers, for example. HSE carried out research on how you speak to farmers as well, and they're based on their perception of risk. We need to find ways to use that information, but above all, I think it is keep it simple. That's why I like the Yellow Wellies guidance in particular. And I think one thing we can all do in posts, stop talking about these deaths and injuries as tragic accidents. They're not, they're avoidable. Very few, if any, are avoidable true acts of God. I'm not, you know, you can always find a reason somebody shouldn't be in that position. And every headline in the newspaper, it's tragic accident. People think accidents happen. They shouldn't. That's the point. Thank you.
I'm an unlucky recipient of the NFU accident stats. So I get emailed when they come through, and every single one you pretty much read thinking, how on earth did that happen? Why did that happen? And it's just stupid things. But anyway, we shouldn't be finishing on a sad note. But yeah, we'll definitely connect up Alix on the awards, because that's a brilliant idea, that is. So we're just about 2 o'clock, so I better wrap things up. So thank you so much, Alix, for stepping in last minute for Steph. It is very much appreciated. Really interesting talk, lots of questions. So really appreciated. So thanks to everybody for joining us today, and I hope you join us for our next lecture on the 12th of August, where we're going to be joined by Norbert Schlingmann, who is the General Manager of the Agricultural Electronics Foundation. So for those that don't know, that's the organisation that drives cross-manufacturer collaboration on tractor and implement communication systems, i.e. ISABUS is what people know it as. So they're the people that bring together all the manufacturers and sit them down in a room and make sure all their systems work together with each other. So that should be a really interesting talk. So thanks again, everybody, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.